May 19th, 2020 meeting of the Gary Common Council. As it is our custom, we'll begin with the prayer by Councilman and Parliamentarian Ron Brewer.
Shall we pray? Father God, in the name of Jesus, we thank you for this day. We thank you for a day that we haven't seen before, God. Lord, we come before you right now as to do the work that you have allowed us to elected to do, oh God, and some appointed to do, oh God. And Lord, we ask that you give us wisdom, knowledge right now, God. We ask that you will bless and heal everyone that's going through at this time of this pandemic, oh God. Bless the loved ones that have lost different ones, oh God. Bless the ones that have lost loved ones without even having any cause of this virus, oh God. We ask you to send your blessings upon this great city, oh God. Bless our leadership, bless our mayor, bless this Gary Common Council, God. Bless all the essential workers and all the workers right now, God. Do it right now in your son Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. This time we'll have our Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, liberty and justice for all.
If anybody else is saying that wrong. Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Here.
Councilman Brewer,
Here.
Councilwoman Brown, Councilwoman Brown, Councilwoman Caldwell,
Here.
Councilman Godwin,
Present.
Councilman Lay,
Here.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Here.
Councilman Williams, Councilman Williams,
Here.
Yeah.
Mr. President, there are 7 present, 2 absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With 7 members present and 2 absent, we have a quorum to conduct the business of the Gary Common Council.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
Councilwoman Brown is on. It looks like she's muted. Just want to acknowledge that for the record. She's
I'm
unmuted.
here,
Okay.
present, I'm here.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown.
There's 8 present, 1 absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Corrected, we 8 members present and 1 absent. We have a quorum to conduct the business of the Gary Common Council. This time we'll have the assignment of council pending ordinances and resolutions on first reading.
President, we have the minutes.
I'm sorry. Council members, before you are the minutes of the May 5th meeting of the Gary Common Council. Is there a motion to approve said minutes?
So moved, Mr. President.
Is there a second?
Second,
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or corrections to the minutes? I do know there is a small typographical error on the last page where the word should be does instead of do. Just to note that, Madam Clerk.
Okay, please hold it.
Any other questions or corrections?
You have to make a motion to amend the minutes to do that.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. I move that we amend the minutes to reflect the correction of the word does in lieu of do. In the minutes, things been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussion? This time we'll have a roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
President Godwin.
Yes.
President vote is 8-0.
The vote of 8-0, the stated amendment passes. At this time, we will need a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as been outlined at this time.
Second.
Been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussion? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins. Councilman Brewer.
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown.
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell.
Abstain.
Councilman Lay.
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon.
Yes.
Councilman Williams.
Yes.
And President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 7 yes, 1 absent.
With 7 yes and 1 abstention, minutes of the May 5th, 2020 Gary Common Council are approved. At this time, we will have our assignment of council pending ordinances and resolutions on first reading.
CPO 2020-26, an ordinance requiring the City of Gary Mayor's Office to submit monthly financial reports to the Gary Common Council, sponsored by William Godwin, Councilman, 1st District.
Finance.
CPO 2020-27, an ordinance establishing new funds and budgets for the Indiana State Department of Health Immunization Grant and Public Health Preparedness and Response Grant, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
Finance.
CPO 2020-28, an ordinance revising 2020 appropriations for Department of Community Investment, salary and operating budgets, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
Finance.
CPO 2020-29, an ordinance requiring the City of Gary Board of Public Works to submit approved contracts to the Gary Common Council, sponsored by William Godwin, 1st District.
Finance.
Mr. President, is assignment of pending ordinances and resolutions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
the Finance Committee has before it CPO 2020-26. For the record, I approve this ordinance for reporting out to the council. Councilwoman Caldwell
Yes.
and Councilman Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, a majority of the Finance Committee has approved CPO 2020-26 for reporting out to the council. Finance Committee has before it CPO 2020-27. For the record, I approve this ordinance for reporting out to the council. Councilwoman Caldwell
Yes.
and Councilman Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, a majority of the Finance Committee has approved CPO 2020-27 for reporting out to the council. Finance Committee has before it CPO 2020-28. For the record, I approve this ordinance for reporting out to the council. Councilwoman Caldwell
Yes.
and Councilman Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, a majority of the Finance Committee has approved CPO 2020-28 for reporting out to the council. CPO 2020-29, I'm sorry. Yeah, the council, I'm sorry. Councilman Godwin
Yes.
and Councilwoman Caldwell.
Yes.
Mr. President, a majority of the Finance Committee has approved CPO 2020-29 for reporting out to the council.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown.
the Finance Committee would like to report out CPO 2020-26, CPO 2020-27, CPO 2020-28, and CPO 2020-29.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown. This time we will have our special and select. Are there any members who would like to speak during special and select?
Mr. President.
Councilwoman Barnes Cotwell is recognized.
Thank you. Good evening. I would like to make an announcement for boards and commissions. We're still accepting resumes and letters of interest for the redevelopment board, and the deadline for that is May the 22nd. Also, May the 26th at 6 p.m. we will have a Zoom meeting scheduled for the interested parties of boards and commissions. Letter of interest can be sent to lcaldwell@gary.gov. That's the email address. The Metro Little League is having a cleanup June the 5th at 8 a.m. Mr. Bradley is in charge of that cleanup. He can be contacted at 219-688-3068 for more information. Jay's Breakfast Club is having a groundbreaking ceremony Friday, May the 22nd at 2 p.m. And it will be at their new location, which will be the southeast corner of 26th and Broadway. So they will still be in the 5th District, just closer to Midtown. And for the citizens of the 5th District, we're having a dumpster day in the 5th District. And it will be the weekend of May the 29th. We will have dumpsters throughout the 5th District. The locations are Franklin School, 35th in Georgia. It'll be in the parking lot, so residents of the 5th District, please use them. Webster School on 37th and Pierce. In the Black Oak area, 29th and Thompson. 25th and Jackson at the corner, and 25th and Broadway. Please take advantage of these dumpsters so we can stop dumping all over the neighborhoods. I believe that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members for special and select?
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
thank you. At this time, I would like to send my condolences out to the Fuller family and the passing of their mother, and also to Mrs. East over at Powell and Coleman. We know that she lost her husband a few weeks ago there, and want to send my condolences out to her also. Just to give an update with the rain that's going on, we see several calls today, and me being a contractor, of people complaining about their sub pumps that's starting to run more than what they would normally be. What you're seeing is the Calumet River is rising in our area at this time, and I caution people in that area that have experienced flooding before to be on the lookout, because we're now starting to see water come across Georgia Street. And if you go down Martin Luther King, you can see that the water is rising there pretty fast also too. So I just want to caution the residents in that area there where they have seen flooding in the past, to be on the lookout there. If you should see anything, please contact our 311 number, and let the administration know exactly what's going on so we can send the services to that area. But that's it, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Brewer. Any other members for special and select?
Mr. President,
Councilman Williams is recognized.
I'd like to thank the dental services and the residents that came out this past weekend on Saturday to help us with the Black at Blue Waters High School, be able to take care of that, hot tubs that were dumped there, and several other items, and got that out of there, so the place, school grounds are clean now, once again.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer, Councilman Lay is recognized.
yeah, don't make that mistake, please. Listen, I've had a couple of inquiries about the June 2nd, the election day. Is that going to be a motion or something done to designate that as a holiday, since that's the election day?
I'm going to defer that question to the mayor and or chief of staff, both of whom are on the line.
Mr. President,
Mr. President,
Mayor Prince is
sorry.
recognized.
yeah, Mr. President, I certainly didn't want to overspeak anyone. I missed half of the question. My audio is slightly challenged over here, but what was the question again, please?
Councilman Lay, do you want to restate it?
Yes, since the election day was moved from May the 5th to June the 2nd, is June the 2nd going to be declared? I understand the council would have to do it, but are we going to make that a holiday for the employees of the city?
So I did hear the question. That's actually a question for the council, Councilman. As far as my memory goes, the council sets the holidays. I thought it was specifically relative to the election. I do know that May 5th, we've observed as a holiday, and like you, I had some questions as to how the council was going to address that, but I'm not sure.
Let me say this. I know that we had conversations with the chief of staff. I had conversations with the chief of staff about which date, and so I thought it would be a collaborative process. I understand our legal role in the matter, but certainly wanted to operate in concert with what the Civil City desired to do. And so I think maybe the question is, we'd like to know what the pleasure of the administration is, and then we will take the appropriate action as this body deems necessary.
So Councilman, perhaps we can go offline and speak about that one, because I was aware of the conversation that you had with Chief of Staff, and I deferred it back to the council as that being, you know, and I'm not pointing fingers or trying to place blame. We certainly could have made a decision, but statutorily, as you pointed out, it's you all's call, and so we would acquiesce to whatever the council calls. But I mean, if you'd like us to consider it, you know, and make the call, then we certainly will.
Mr. Chair.
Attorney Williams is recognized.
Thank you. In the past, we've run afoul of the State Board of Accounts concerning this very issue. I would caution the council to amend the holiday calendar to include June 2nd as a holiday. It's better to have done it and not need it than need it and have not done it, because if you do give them the holiday off and it's not on the calendar, that in the past has triggered an audit finding. So I did have this conversation with some council members. I thought that would be on the agenda today to amend the holiday calendar to reflect that day on.
I'm certainly open to entertaining a motion to add the June 2nd holiday. I know that our next council meeting will be on June 2nd, so if we don't take action now, we'll likely have to do something retroactively.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
before any action is taken, I do want to ask a question, and the mayor or the chief of staff can chime in. I know a holiday has been given, and we did not ask to make any changes. Does that impact anyway with the budget by giving a holiday when other people have to work with having holiday pay on the coincide with the budget? So how does that affect? I don't want us to do anything that we already deal with financial issues. So I don't want to increase anything we don't have to.
Sure, Councilman Brewer, you
Yes,
make a very valid point, and without question, it will, particularly if there are persons scheduled to work there who are entitled to the overtime, then they certainly would be granted the privilege of you know, the additional pay. And to that point, it would definitely have an impact on the budget, the overall budget.
So I wouldn't be in favor for voting for it, because we did not make the change. That means we'd be given an additional holiday, which one that they have already taken. And that puts the mayor in a different position financially. So,
Mr. Chair.
Attorney Williams is recognized.
If the decision is not to approve the additional holiday, then in fact you are saying that the mayor must be open. That there's no alternative. Either you approve the holiday and staff is off that day, or you do not approve the holiday and the city must remain open on that day. Just in your deliberation, understand that.
Mr. President,
Councilman Lay.
I believe we should proceed to just simply make it a holiday. I'm not sure what the financial impact is going to be on the city. We probably have a tremendous impact already. And that way it is clear. At the same time, I don't think we're going to hold a council meeting on June the 2nd. So I don't know why we wouldn't just go ahead and do that. A lot of people are still working from home. So, I mean, or not working from home. They're just not on staff. I agree with Mr. Williams, or Attorney Williams, I should say. I believe we need to do something with it, not to sit idle and do nothing. So I move that June the 2nd be added to the holiday schedule for the city of Gary.
Mr. President, I second that motion.
I just have a quick question Attorney Williams, do we first need to add it to the agenda on first reading and go through and try to pass it on all three readings? Or does the motion that has been made, is that simply sufficient if whatever the result of the vote is of the body?
In the past, we've treated it simply as an amendment made on the floor, but to make it absolutely correct, let's go through the formality, have a motion to add that issue to the agenda and move forward. It's already passed on third reading, so we'd only need one additional vote to make the amendment. But yes, I would recommend that you amend the agenda to add the issue.
So the motion would be to amend the agenda to add, to add the June 2nd holiday vote that's been the motion for tonight, and then we would hear it on second reading, you're saying? I just want to make sure I'm correct.
No, you would hear it on third and final.
Okay.
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer?
One point, by us passing it, if it should pass, you don't give the mayor option. You automatically have to declare it a holiday. And so therefore, at that day, if there's any overtime that should be given to anyone that works that day, they're obligated to receive the compensation at that time.
Yes.
So you don't give the mayor option at this time if you pass it. You already make it a holiday automatically.
I understand that. It's my intent not to give him an option. In other words, if the council declares it a holiday, it becomes a holiday. And so that not only tells the mayor, it tells the city judge, the city clerk, as well as the city council. So it's our responsibility. I knew that when I asked the question. So no, I don't think we need to give him an option.
Well, this is my last point. I just want the record to reflect there was a holiday set by this body, which we did not change because of the COVID-19, and the election date was changed. And this body did not make the change, but the holiday was given to the employees. But I'm good.
So I think at this time, we need a motion to add this matter to the agenda on first reading, and then we'll proceed when we get to third and final.
I move to add the additional holiday of June 2nd to the agenda for today, May 19th, 2020.
It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
The motion has been moved and properly seconded. Questions, or we're just adding it to the agenda, but questions or discussion about that? I know we've had some discussion already, but any questions or discussion? Seeing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
No.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
No.
Mr. President, vote is 6 yes, 2 noes.
With 6 yes and 2 noes, the stated amendment to our calendar is added to the agenda on first reading, and it is assigned to the Finance Committee.
Chairman Godwin?
Attorney Williams is recognized.
Yeah, there's no need to
We don't need to-
repass it on first. It's simply being considered on third and final as an amendment.
Duly noted. So we'll take that up when we get to third and final. Thank you, Attorney Williams. Okay, any other matters on special and select? I will just say quickly that I had a great interview this afternoon with our Calumet Township Assessor, Jacqueline Collins, along with her Chief Deputy Assessor, Mr. Ed Golson. It was almost an hour, and it will be shared on the Common Council Facebook page, as well as on Nextdoor and a variety of other social media insights. There was a lot of helpful information about how we assess and about the dollars that are collected and what has happened over the past couple decades that has a lot of implications for our current budgetary situation. So just want to let the public know that we will be sharing that and hoping to do more of that in terms of helping folks understand the various roles that elected officials play in the life of our city and community. So thanks to the Calumet Township Assessor for her willingness to participate in that interview. Any other members for special and select? Seeing none, council pending ordinances and resolutions on third and or final reading.
CPO 2020-21, an ordinance amending Chapter 10, Article 9, Section 10-111 regarding public restrooms and gasoline service stations. Sponsored by Councilman William Godwin, the first.
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
Mr. President, I move that this be deferred back to the planning committee, to Tuesday, the 26th at 5 p.m.
Second. It's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
Councilman Brewer.
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown.
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell.
Yes.
Councilman Lay.
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon.
Yes.
Councilman Williams.
Yes.
And President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is
With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-21 is deferred to the Planning and Development Committee, which will meet on Tuesday, May 26th at 5 p.m.
CPO 2020-25, an ordinance revising the 2020 appropriations for redevelopment department operating budget for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2020 and ending December 31st, 2020. Sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
I move that CPO 2020-25 be deferred back to the Finance Committee. Finance Committee meeting next Tuesday. What is that date?
The 26th.
Okay. Next Tuesday with the public hearing in 2 weeks.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussion?
What time will that public hearing be?
I'm sorry, 5:30. What time is your meeting?
5 p.m.
5:30, yes.
Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
Councilman Brewer.
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown.
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell.
Yes.
Councilman Lay.
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon.
Yes.
Councilman Williams. Councilman Williams.
Yes.
President Godwin.
Yes.
President, the vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-25 is deferred back to the Finance Committee for a hearing on Tuesday, May 26th at 5:30 p.m.
Mr. President, these ordinance and resolutions on third and final.
I think now we'll take up the amendment that was added to the agenda, the amendment to the holiday schedule. Is that correct?
Okay, I don't have that in front of me to read it.
Okay. Attorney Williams, can you lead us through that?
There's simply an amendment on the floor to add to the existing holiday calendar the June 2nd election. Now, that will have to be reduced to writing and sent to the clerk, but it's permissible to move forward today.
Thank you, Attorney Williams. At this point, is there a motion to pass?
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
I have a question. We did not change our meeting, our regularly scheduled meeting, to June 3rd. It would normally be on June 2nd. We didn't change it. We need a motion to change our meeting.
That'll happen. We're in the middle of a motion right now, but she's
Okay.
correct. That will have to happen before you conclude the meeting.
Right, okay.
Thank you, Councilwoman Brown. Is there a motion to add June 2nd, 2020 as an amendment to our holiday schedule?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm not sure who did that, but it's been moved and properly seconded, I believe, by Councilwoman Barnes Cogwell. Questions or discussion at this time? And just as a reminder, the vote we took earlier was just to put it on the agenda. Now we're actually deciding whether we will approve adding June 2nd, 2020 to the holiday schedule.
Mr. President,
Councilman Lay is recognized.
if we do not approve it, then we certainly will have to have a council meeting on June the 2nd. I mean, if it's not a holiday, there's no reason that we wouldn't go forward with our own meeting. I think under the circumstances, if it passes, then we certainly could do what Councilwoman Brown suggested. We would pick another date other than June the 2nd. But if it fails, we would have to have a council meeting on that day.
I have a question about that train of thought, in the sense that the council has the liberty to reschedule any of its meetings as long as there's due notice to the general public. Is that correct, Attorney Williams?
I agree with that. This is a Claudius Lay, not Attorney Williams.
Councilman Lay?
That's not the issue. Why are we continuing? I mean, there should be a reason for the continuance. So the only reason I can think of is because it's an election. I can't think of any other reason that we're continuing. And if we're not declaring that to be a holiday, why are we continuing? For an election, why are we continuing? I mean, I know we can do it, but we certainly should have a substantial reason, since the public is used to having meetings on the first and third Tuesday of each month. There should be a logical reason for the move. And certainly we can't use the election.
Mr. Chair, I was muted. I'm sorry, I was muted. I thought you all could hear me, but you're right. I said you're right, and your statement is correct.
Thank you, Attorney Williams. Councilman Brewer is recognized.
Mr. President, just before I got on the city council, there was certain time that election day fell and City Hall was open. That motion came about since I've been on the council that we will be off during election time. I think this is a unique situation here, something that none of us seen coming with the COVID-19, with the shutdown of government all over, and a lot of changes happened, which it caught us off guard also with changing that date. But by that date going forward, and we gave the holiday, I don't see why we should give a second holiday. And because of the financial situation that we're in as a city, we're putting ourselves more in financial harm too.
Let me just add, I know we're probably a little bit out of our general protocol of having a motion and a second before we do question and discussion, but can we first do the motion? We have the motion, and I believe it was seconded. I think we had a question about whether we would change the council meeting date. So, any other questions or discussion about the motion that's been made?
I have one. Would somebody tell me how much the financial burden is? Could they give me a dollar figure?
Well, I don't think no one has that offhand, but we know there is a financial hurt that the city's going to take with this.
Yeah, but without that, we're just doing something in the blind. I mean, is it $100,000 or is it $25? Yeah, that's a significant. Since you raised it, I thought we'd have to have.
Let's just say I know it's more than $25.
But less than 100,000.
So I see that the deputy chief of the police department, Evans, is on the line, and I wanted to ask him were there any particular issues that he foresaw in terms of overtime or any other lost time, comp time, as the case may be, by us doing this in terms of the police department?
No, there is not a dollar monetary overtime cost with the police department. By contractual agreement, if officers are working that day, what they receive is compensatory time that they can take almost like a personal day at any other time during the calendar year at their discretion. If officers are working inside and are off, they just get the day off. It doesn't cost the city an overtime cost or financial cost. It's compensatory time for the police department as far as our sworn staff, but the police department itself would be closed, and that would also go for the courts, the clerk, and all the auxiliary departments within the public safety facility.
And I do know that the judge did tell me it was her preference not to be closed on June 2nd because they already had May 5th, and I think they're behind and trying to catch up, given how long we've been off, and I suppose the caseload has grown. She's obviously not on the call, so I'm careful speaking on her behalf, but she did indicate that to me. I also know that our interim controller is on the line, and I think her opinion on the matter in terms of potential costs to the city is prudent for us to inquire upon. So, Chief of Staff Colvin and Interim Controller, do you have any thoughts on the financial implications of moving forward with the holiday?
I don't have a dollar figure for you, but I do know that when it comes to overtime, the Teamsters Union and would be the entity that would have the overtime impact. Now there are not as many members as there once was, but that's the area where we would see the overtime impact.
Thank you. And I believe currently the city is supposed to reopen on June 1st, right?
The general staff is June 1st.
Okay.
Department heads return May 26th.
So basically, we would have our staff come on June 1st, then be off on June 2nd, and then come back on June 3rd should this motion pass.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. President.
Councilman Weatherspoon is recognized.
Yes, Ms. Colvin, excuse me, but just for clarity, was the situation that some employees were off on that day and some employees had to work, or was everyone off as it relates to the city? Because I believe there was some people in the council staff.
Get off of here, because I ain't got no business in this link. Okay, bye-bye. Okay, bye-bye.
Who's that?
I think that was someone accidentally unmuted themselves. Please proceed, Councilman Weatherspoon.
Yeah, my question is, was everyone off across the board on election day in May?
It depended. As Councilman Godwin just mentioned, the court wanted to have that day off, so they were off on the 5th. I let everyone know that there was a holiday. There were some entities that continued to work. I know GSD worked on that day, so they did not have it as a holiday. It depended upon the work that had to be done. So if there was a situation where we had to actually have workers out, and since it was a holiday, they were paid overtime.
So we know there is a cost. We don't know what that number is, but it's not zero.
Exactly. And it's not 100,000, so
okay.
It's not that low.
Any other questions or discussion from council members?
I'd like to ask Attorney Williams again, what were you saying? What was your comment in terms of what you thought the State Board of Accounts, what their concern would be if we did not, in fact, make it a legal holiday?
Well, their concern in the past is that you gave the holiday and you didn't list it as a holiday, which created an exception. In this case, if it failed, if this motion failed, the city would simply have to come to work. And if it was approved, then they would not have to come to work, and the entities that the mayor deemed necessary to be there, of course, he would have that right, and if there was overtime due to them, they would get that. If it was compensatory time, they would get that. So the only issue is conflicting with the ordinance. As long as we don't conflict with what the ordinance says, there's no audit exception issue.
Mr. President,
Councilman Lay is recognized.
and I've been persuaded in the light of this financial burden on the city that I will be voting no to making June the 2nd a holiday. And certainly based upon Attorney Williams' explanation, that's fine, that the employees would have to come in on June the 2nd.
Mr. President, Mr. President, I would like to change my vote too from yes to no, because I agree with Councilman Lay.
There hasn't been a vote.
Yeah, there's been no vote, but we will be asked to vote.
I'm gonna change it. Well, okay.
Mr.
Any
President,
other, Councilwoman Burns Caldwell is recognized.
I hear all the concern, and my concern is they got paid already. They got paid for a holiday, and because of the pandemic, we didn't use that day. So I think it's okay if they came to work June the 2nd. And we changed our council date. I think it's okay. They had their holiday.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Mr. Chair,
Attorney Williams is recognized.
in lieu of a vote that seems to be already stated, it would be quite easier just to withdraw the motion.
Okay.
Mr. President, I think the vote should be taken.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
the
agree,
vote,
Council.
it's on the floor. It's on the floor. All we were doing was prefacing our vote. That's all that's going on. So let's take the vote.
I agree. Any other questions or discussion? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
No.
Councilman Brewer,
No.
Councilwoman Brown,
No.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
No.
Councilman Lay,
No,
Councilman Weatherspoon,
No.
Councilman Williams,
No.
and President Gower.
No.
President vote is 0 yes, 8 no's.
With 0 yes and 8 no's, that's a first for me. The motion fails. This time, we will have council pending and ordinances and resolutions on second reading.
CPO 2020-26, an ordinance requiring the City of Gary Mayor's Office to submit monthly financial reports to the Gary Common Council, sponsored by William Godwin, Councilman of the 1st District.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown.
I move for passage of CPO 2020-26 on second reading. Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, May 26th at 5:00 p.m. and a public hearing on June 2nd.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Questions or discussion? Roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
yes,
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Gower.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-26 passes on second reading with a committee hearing to be held on Tuesday, May 26th at 5:30 p.m.
CPO 2020-27, an ordinance establishing funds and budgets for the Indiana State Department of Health and Immunization Grant and Public Health Preparedness and Response Grant, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown.
I move for passage of CPO 2020-27 on second reading. Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, May 26th at 5:30 p.m. and a public hearing on June 2nd.
Questions?
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-27 passes on second reading with a committee hearing on Tuesday, May 26th at 5:30 p.m.
CPO 2020-28, an ordinance revising the 2020 appropriations for Department of Community Investment salary and operating budgets, sponsored by Mayor Jerome Prince, City of Gary.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown.
I move for passage of CPO 2020-28 on second reading. Finance Committee meeting on Tuesday, May 26th at 5:30 p.m. and a public hearing on June 2nd.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-28 passes on second reading with a committee hearing on Tuesday, May 26th at 5:30 p.m.
CPO 2020-29, an ordinance requiring the City of Gary Board of Public Works to submit approved contracts to the Gary Common Council, sponsored by Councilman William Godwin of the First District.
Mr. President,
Councilwoman Brown is recognized.
I move for passage of CPO 2020-29 on second reading. Finance Committee meeting Tuesday, May 26th at 5:30 p.m. and a public hearing on June 2nd.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. Any questions or discussion?
Yes.
Councilman Williams?
Looking at the ordinance in the past, and speaking of the railroad closure in the 6th district, the board did not give any notice prior to the council. Are we going to try to make sure that takes place through the board, besides what you're asking? That we have some kind of representation at the Board of Works?
So what I will say is that I did have as the sponsor of this particular ordinance, I did have a conversation with a council member who did suggest that I should add to it the minutes from the Board of Public Works, along with any approved contracts within so many days, so that we are aware of what's happening in the city, as well as the minutes from those meetings. Now, in terms of our having a representative there, I'm not sure about that. That's certainly not in terms of the scope of this ordinance.
Mr. President, I believe the minutes would, I'm sorry, Mr. President.
Councilman Lay is recognized.
Yeah, I believe the minutes would solve that. All the person sitting there would be doing is trying to summarize what they're hearing, and where it may take a couple of hours, even if we had such a person, like if we assign one of our legislative aides, or assistants, I should say. So I suspect we'd have full information based upon their approved minutes. So we would know, I mean, we would know just as fast if we did it with the minutes.
Thank you, Councilman Lay. Any other questions or discussion? All right, roll call, Madam Clerk. I'm sorry, the Corporation Council would like to be recognized. The issue with this screen is I didn't see his hand raised.
No, you are right on time, Councilman Godwin. Thank you for recognizing me. I serve as the president of the Board of Public Works and Safety, and we, during the pandemic, have been doing our meetings virtually. But generally, once we're back in City Hall, we meet every Wednesday at 10 o'clock a.m., and the agenda is presented about 48 hours in advance, and I welcome the council people to attend those meetings, especially after you looked at the agenda and see that something might particularly affect your district. You're welcome to attend those meetings and chime in as you deem appropriate. So I just want to reiterate that invitation to the council members to attend those meetings as we conduct business on a weekly basis. Now, for this week, because of the notice requirement, we're going to be having our virtual Board of Public Works meeting on Thursday at 10 o'clock a.m. And the Zoom login information can be made available to you upon your request. It's also been posted on our Gary social media as well as gary.gov. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Corporation Counsel McCain. Any other questions or discussion?
Thank you, Mr. McCain. I appreciate that.
All right. This time we'll have roll call.
Councilwoman Atkins,
Yes.
Councilman Brewer,
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown,
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell,
Yes.
Councilman Lay,
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon,
Yes.
Councilman Williams,
Yes.
and President Dowling.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, CPO 2020-29 passes on second reading, with a committee hearing to be held on Tuesday, May 26, 2020 at 5:30 p.m.
Mr. President, as pending ordinances and resolutions on second reading.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This time we will have our mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of the council. It's always a pleasure to be here, and it is this evening. So just maybe a couple of mentions, and certainly I'll entertain any questions that you have this evening. Let's see, where should we start there, council? Well, I'm really pleased about Jay's Breakfast Club. I think certainly this is an opportunity to acknowledge the work of one particular member on our team who 140 days ago took a project that appeared to had hit some skids and perhaps a dead end to some extent. But in any event, this is a success. We should all be proud of it. And I too will be there to celebrate on Friday with them. As you all know, we received a significant supply of face masks for our residents from Dr. Willie Wilson over in Chicago. It's pretty miraculous how it occurred, but within 2 days, he was able to help facilitate 50,000 masks over here, and we certainly have a few more for our constituents. And in fact, I'm almost certain that the council's been notified that starting tomorrow, we'll make them available to our senior citizens on behalf of the city council, and Dr. Willie Wilson. You know, we've had our share of press conferences certainly since the beginning, and unfortunately there's occasions where the subject matter is just unnerving, and today was one of those. I was joined by the chief of police, deputy chief, commander of investigation, the councilman from the 6th district who serves as your public safety chairman attended as well. But anytime you have a situation as violent as the one that occurred over the weekend in your city, it certainly warrants a response. Anytime you have a situation that's violent in your community, period, you certainly want to acknowledge it. But there's just something about a child that really touches the soul of everyone. And to that point, we thought it was important enough to at least let the public safety officers acknowledge, first of all, thank them for their efforts, but also acknowledge that just like any other crime that occurs in the community, that they will employ all of their efforts towards resolving this one. I did have an opportunity to speak with the president and the vice president, as well as a couple of other members relative to this matter. And to that point, I'm pleased that we were able to establish a mechanism by which we can keep the council informed of the efforts of our police department and any of our departments for that matter. But in this particular instance, the subject is one that's unsettling to us all, but certainly one that can't go by without being spoken on. Lastly, Mr. Chair, I want to speak about the flooding that the Councilman Brewer mentioned. Yet lately we've had some historic rains, in fact, record-breaking. But as the councilman suggested, a factor of that or a result of that often leads to flooding in certain pockets of the community. In addition to the amount of rain we had, we also have another issue, as you all are aware, and that's an aged sewer system. And Councilman's absolutely right. If there's anyone who's experiencing any issues, they should absolutely call the city, because we need to record these as well as try to find solutions and give the best advice to persons. I point that out because just today I spoke with a young lady who, you know, your heart sort of goes out to her. Over the last 10 years, she spent over $50,000, and still today she has 2 inches of water in her basement, and she lives along the Calumet River. And you know, unfortunately, you don't have the answers for her, but having dealt with these situations, or at least experienced them personally even a number of years, you have some insight into the pain that's caused by that. And so the councilman's absolutely right, though. If anyone has any issues, they should certainly call it in, make us aware. GSD certainly will do their due diligence in exploring what's in the lines in terms of the city's side of the line, and also try to offer the best recommendation for the constituents, or at least that certainly should be the approach. Mr. Chairman, that's the end of the comments for this evening. I will gladly address any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any questions for the Mayor or the administration? I do know that one question was submitted to me related to the Economic Development Corporation, which I sit on and Councilman Brewer is the president of, and did mention that issue at the last meeting, and just wanted to know whether there were any updates. We were under the impression that a new Economic Development Corporation was being established, and so we'd like to know if there's any update. We did ask about it at the last meeting, if there was any update for today.
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. I don't personally have an update. I will acknowledge that a new corporation is being explored, and to that extent, we will be able to offer some information at very minimum very soon. Is Eric on the line this evening? He could probably speak to, if he is, to what process they are along. I don't believe he is.
Mr. Mayor, I don't believe that Eric is on the line, but I can speak to it if it's okay with you and the president.
Yes.
Okay. We have, at the direction of the mayor, established a new Economic Development Corporation. The name is Reimagine Economic Development Corporation of Gary. We are prepared to send some correspondence to the our predecessor organization, and we will do that by the end of the month. And that's all I can report to you now, Councilman Godwin, is that the organization has been established, but we are still in the embryonic stages of that, and we will be able to report more at our next council meeting with respect to the new economic development organization under Mayor Prince.
President,
Councilman Lay is recognized.
as I recall, if my memory does not fail me, members appointed to that economic development group was necessary for there be a council vote on it. There was, in fact, some litigation around there. So I believe we have to, as I recall, and I'm doing it from memory, and as you know, I'm getting older by the minute. There was at least 12 people, as I understood, on it. Now, maybe I hope I'm not getting it mixed up. It's not only submitting what it is, they have to submit the names for approval, if it's what I think it is.
May I address Councilman Lay's concerns?
Yes, sir.
This particular organization is separate and apart from the Gary Economic Development Corporation. Mayor Prince does not have any jurisdiction over the Gary Economic Development Corporation. That concern is completely separate. We will be proposing that the economic development engine of the city be run through the new corporation established by the mayor in the future. That that discussion is yet to be had, but this is completely separate, Councilman Lay, from the Gary Economic Development Corporation that was reactivated during the Karen Freeman Wilson administration. This is completely new, and we will be giving further details regarding the new Red Corp in the future council meetings.
Well, I just want to say in response that and I'm a member of the Gary Economic Development Corporation, as is Councilman Brewer, that we don't have any intention of dissolving. We do have real estate as a private entity that we own, and we'll continue to do that. And so I hope that whatever is created, we're able to coexist in a way that is mutually beneficial to the city. I don't know whether Councilman Brewer he's the president of the Gary Economic Development Corporation. And I would just add that the current bylaws of the Gary Economic Development Corporation has an appointment process that the sitting mayor, wherever that person is, has the ability to appoint. But in any event, I'll defer to Councilman Brewer.
Yes, I'll echo your sentiments from the board. They do not have any pleasure to dissolve it at all. We want to see what was going on with the new administration, or with this administration. What was their plans to go with the EDC at this time? But we'll take the findings back to the board, and whatever the board pledge is, we will follow just that.
Mr. Chairman.
Mayor is recognized.
So, yeah, I appreciate the dialogue, and I assure you, as I did on the phone today or yesterday when we spoke, that I have every intention of operating in the highest degree of transparency. I think this conversation is a little bit premature. I will say that we understand both of you all's position and wouldn't have really expected anything differently because you are a part of that board, and that's something how you functioned and you believe in that. This administration has a slightly different perspective, and that's what we're preparing. Once it's fully prepared, we'll certainly address the council appropriately and share any and all revelations from this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any other questions for the mayor at this time?
Yes, Mr. President.
Councilman Weatherspoon is recognized.
Yes, my correspondence, my conversation now is not just for the mayor, but it's for all of us. With our employees returning back to work on June the 1st, I got some concerns about our being prepared for our employee safety and just want to make sure certain safeguards are in place. You know, I make my money as a health and safety professional. And so when it comes down to mitigating issues such as hazards and things of this nature, you know, it's kind of where I kind of do my thing. My concern with this reopening June 1st is to ensure that our employees have the necessary PPE, be it gloves, be it masks, that they have sanitizer, disinfectant, things of this nature. Do we have those things in place for both the council as well as city departments? Also, we have to be very concerned with the fact that this disease is transmitted not just via breathing, it's transmitted through touch. And it's very important, with that being said, that people or our staff, be it council or city, whatever, you know, engage in safe practices such as frequent hand washing and things of that nature, the proper use of PPE, being able, or should I say, knowing to dispose of masks, knowing how to dispose of gloves after proper usage, even something as simple as having an understanding of how to take off a glove. It seems kind of, you know, simple and elementary, but in reality, it's, I don't know, I think there's steps that maybe we need to go a little further with the protocol and making sure that we have a lot of this in place.
Councilman, thank you. I will say that we have established a return to work task force. It's probably about the third or fourth task force that's been established in the last 45 or 50 days. And I mention that because any decision or any statement that's made relative to COVID and the protection of people, I'd like to think that we've done so very responsibly, and I wish I could take the credit for it, but I can't. It's because of the thoughtfulness of the folks that I just mentioned. It's the same with June the 2nd, Councilman, or June the 1st, when the employees return back to work. I assure you that every precaution necessary will be taken, and they'll be adequately protected first before they're ever asked to return back to work. And I would imagine at the end of this week, we should have a report from our committee. As the chief of staff stated, managers will actually be coming back, or department heads will be coming back the day after the Memorial Day. And so the things that you mentioned, most of them have to be in place then. And to that extent, I would say that we're prepared, or will be prepared, certainly.
Mayor, first of all, I want to thank you, because I think that you all have done an outstanding job, the way you got in front of this thing and your leadership in it. So by no stretch of the imagination, you know, it's what I'm saying, a criticism of that. I just know that it's very difficult right now, very difficult to get certain items. Just wondering if we have them, if they've been ordered, you know, in particular those disinfectants that have to be used on a daily basis, those sanitizers, those gloves, things of that nature.
Yes, sir.
May I just add something, Mayor?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Councilman Weatherspoon, the mayor mentioned the task force, and we've been working really diligently for some time now. We have a plan in place and are implementing the plan now. The city buildings are being deep cleaned. We have purchased personal protective equipment. So we have that on board. We've purchased thermometers. We are going through the buildings now, putting in place any of the guards that we think might be necessary within the departments. So we do have a plan in place, and we are pursuing that. It's very, very important that everybody, every employee, feel comfortable when they come back to work. We have asked department heads to look at staggered work days, so that everyone is not in the department together if the space requirements are small or tight. So we've looked at all of these things. We've looked at our administrative procedures, what happens if someone has an underlying condition that might make them more susceptible to the disease. So this has been a really intense time for our return to work task force, but we have done what we can, and we're continuing to do what we can to make sure that employees are safe when they come back.
And the only thing I could add to that, if I may, Mr. Chairman, is that I just received a confirmation that we do have an adequate supply of masks, gloves, sanitizer, and disinfectant for our employees when they come back.
We do.
All right, well, thank you. One other thing I'd like to conclude with it, Mayor, I appreciate what you're doing so far as pushing the date back, because it's just important. This thing is very serious right now, and in particularly, it is very serious within our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Weatherspoon. I just wanted to quickly note that the Common Council office, we're also following the combined stay-at-home, work-from-home, staggered process to ensure that there's proper physical distance among our staff. And I would just add that I know there were meetings with the judge for the city and the city clerk, but in the future, when there are such meetings, whoever the president of the council is, his or her designee should also be there as head of a particular branch of government.
And Councilman Godwin, I received a list of questions from your designee that you wanted answered, and I'll be able to provide those answers tomorrow.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? I wanted to ask about, I've got a few issues with the Lake Street construction. Just wanted to get a sense of how that is progressing. I know Mr. Vicari is on the line, and there was also some concerns about flooding on Lake Street. I know a big part of this project has been to improve flow of water, and so we're having some standing water, large amounts, in areas that have recently been fixed. And so just wanted to know that we got more to come, and that there will be improvements to solve that problem.
Mr. President?
Councilman Brewer's on the line.
Yes, this question is for the mayor concerning paving, and also in line with the questions from the last meeting of the work that's going on 25th Avenue. I did receive a call from representative from the water company there, where they're putting in a new line for the fire hydrants on there. And what I was asking was to make sure that the pavement goes back correctly and that it's not halfway put back. But I did receive calls from residents asking, is there any paving that's going to take place? And I don't know if the mayor can give me an update tonight because there's so much been going on with the pandemic. But if you can, Ms. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman. So to your other issue, duly noted. I'll certainly do everything I can to make sure that they restore those areas back the way they should be. I agree with you 100%. In terms of paving this year, I don't have a definitive answer, Councilman. I will share with you that there's still outstanding paving bills from last year, and I mean, that's not a slight, it's just a fact, and to that extent it certainly will impede our ability to pave this year, but I'll give you a report on any anticipated paving as soon as we possibly can.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
And mine wasn't a comment, it was a question. I don't know if Mr. Vicari is still on the line.
Yes, I am. I'm sorry.
Thank
I didn't know if you were just making a comment or a question, Chairman. My apologies.
Oh, it's my problem. I don't know how to ask questions. Thank you.
Yeah, if I may, real quick. So 2 things. The flooding that was observed during this last rainstorm, by the way, we had a period of number of days that were wet days, saturated soils, making the Sunday evening rain even worse than it normally would have been. But we received 3 inches of rainfall in 3 hours, which is very, very intense. No storm sewers anywhere in our land will take that kind of runoff and convey it. But that being said, the Lake Street project did have inlet protection at those inlets. What that inlet protection does during construction, when there's stones and rocks and sand and dirt running around, we're required by federal, state, and local standards to protect those inlets from having that debris get into the inlets. Unfortunately, while you're under construction, if you have a very intense rainfall like that, those inlet protections, which are more or less just fabric material, tend to retard flow from getting into the inlet. But that will not be the condition once we are finished with the project, which brings me to the schedule. We are on schedule as it's been outlaid at the beginning of this construction season. We are running, I'll cross my fingers when I say this, but a little ahead of schedule. But we are doing well. And if there's any questions, I can answer them.
Thank you, and that is very good to hear. Any other questions of the administration? I do know, just as a heads up, I want to ask the Corporation Council and Mayor's Office and leadership in the police department to look into a particular ordinance that was passed many years ago by this body, the essence of which is that while obviously police officers by state statute can live anywhere in an adjoining county at this point, there is an ordinance that states that in order to get a promotion, they must be residents of the city of Gary. And I'd like to explore whether that also exists in Hammond and East Chicago. I was told that's the case, but I will be submitting the exact language of that ordinance that's already law. I was asked to look into it by a resident, and so just wanted to give you the heads up on that question in terms of the promotion of officers who are non-residents.
Mr. President.
Councilman Lay is recognized.
That absolutely would be unconstitutional. In other words, state law says they have the ability to move. The only restriction I believe you might can place on them is that they cannot remove a vehicle. I looked at that, maybe 12 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, in terms of a ordinance that was in place, but it couldn't work. It was several paragraphs, and the reason the ordinance stayed in place, it had a paragraph that said, well, even if certain portions of it was unconstitutional, the remaining part would be. But I don't see how you can do that when the state, and maybe this would be a place for Attorney Williams to chime in. I don't see how you can do that. You can write an ordinance.
Well, I'm not trying to do it. Yeah, I'm not trying to do it. I have the actual ordinance.
But I think it's unconstitutional. It's never been enforced. That's what I'm telling you. I've seen it. I thought you were going to try and do something else. I've seen that ordinance. I believe Representative Hatcher had some concerns when she came on the council, and that would have been 2000. I guess she would have come on in 2007. No, she came on earlier. She ran for mayor. When she first came on, she had concerns about that, and I was the attorney for the council at that time. And we looked at it, and it was sitting there, and I tried to explain to her. I believe, in fact, her father, the former and late Richard Gordon Hatcher, attempted to put that in place many years before 2008. He may have done that when he was either mayor or on the city council. But either way, it's just sitting there. It's never been enforced. The enforcement of it, I believe, would be unconstitutional. But of course, Attorney Williams would be the best person to advise the council in this area. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know great minds disagree. I don't particularly have a legal opinion on it, but certainly wanted to gather what great minds of the law, our Corporation Council and Attorney Williams, think about this language that currently exists. So if there's unconstitutional language, I think we ought to eradicate it. But if it is constitutional, and certainly if it's being practiced, as I've been told, but I want to confirm that, if it's actually being enforced in other cities in the state of Indiana, then that might question whether or not it's unconstitutional. But of course, that requires quite a bit of legal research to verify that. But in any event, I wanted to just give a heads up that that's something that I've been asked to explore, and was going to put that forward as a legal question to be researched. Any other questions or discussion from members of the council for our administration? Seeing none, I did fail to note that I was informed that we did have a police officer, Henry Waddell, I believe, who had been serving since 1996, which recently passed, and certainly want to send condolences to his family. And also that the niece of a police officer, Anita Adamson, passed, as well as the brother of a fireman, Raynard Robinson, passed. And certainly want to send our condolences to all of those families, and most certainly to Mr. Henry Waddell, who served on our police department in his passing. Any other questions or discussion or concerns from members of the council?
Mr. President,
Councilman Brewer is recognized.
there's a matter that needs to be taken up with moving the next council meeting to June 3rd. It needs to take place.
Is there a motion to make the next council meeting? There is a motion. You're making a motion, Councilman
Yes,
Brewer?
make the motion to move the next council meeting from June 2nd to June 3rd at 6 p.m. via Zoom.
Second?
It's been moved and properly seconded by Councilwoman Barnes Caldwell. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, roll call, Madam Clerk.
Councilwoman Atkins. Councilwoman Atkins.
Yes.
Councilman Brewer.
Yes.
Councilwoman Brown.
Yes.
Councilwoman Caldwell.
Yes.
Councilman Lay.
Yes.
Councilman Weatherspoon.
Yes.
Councilman Williams.
You're muted.
Councilman Williams?
You're muted, Councilman Williams.
Yes, sorry about that.
President Godwin.
Yes.
Mr. President, the vote is 8-0.
With a vote of 8-0, the next council meeting of the Garrett Common Council will be on June 3rd, 2020 at 6 o'clock p.m. via Zoom. Any other matters, question, or discussion? Seeing none, is there a motion to dismiss?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
The move is adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.